Hello everybody. In this video I would like to ask and answer the question, what is a possible structure for my section A response in unit 1? You may remember from the previous videos that in terms of the genre, so to say, we are writing a comparative evaluation or an evaluative comparison, because we have two texts, two speakers, two contexts, and so on and so forth. You know that better than me already. So to answer this question, I think several steps are necessary to be made. And step number one is to, of course, consider the bullet points in the task after reading the task. So we remember that it is our written response in which we're covering, and this is the juicy part. What are we covering? So there are 3 bullet points. We're covering relevant language frameworks and levels. Let's call it language in use. Mainly, these are our examples for the point, quote, comment structures that we would like to include into our response, as many as possible, by the way, but with a good deal of selectivity. Bullet point number 2 is concepts and issues such as social, cultural, and gender factors. Let's call it identity part. So we introduce or evaluate the picture that the speakers want to depict about themselves in their language or by the means of the language. And bullet point number 3 is contextual factors such as mode, field, function, and audience. So it is contexts of both texts. So it makes it a comparative response in which we refer to the language in use, speak about the identity of the speakers, and we also consider the contextual factors. Contexts, like this. So I've had a vague suggestion to be made in mind. So let's see how it goes. If we begin by introducing something that everybody knows, which is that any response can be given a very general classical structure of introduction, body, and conclusion. Let's check if it makes sense in our comparative evaluation. So say that we have introduction, we have body, and then we have conclusion. So what does it mean? Let's make it in black ink. Not only what does it mean, but what can we include under these parts exactly. So let's just act on the spot, because I really want to highlight that there are a lot of students who keep on asking the same question: what is the exact structure to follow, and receive 35 out of 35 points. Well, I cannot answer this question because it depends on so many factors that it would be irrelevant to try this guesswork. So it is better to train yourself and see the patterns that each one of us uses, and try to use them accordingly and in appropriate places. So when we speak about the place of the introduction, what do we put there? I think that it's a good idea to summarize the information that we know. So we summarize the general information about the speakers and also contexts. So if you've watched the previous videos, you may remember that we really want to make use of the information given in the task, and I believe that this is a good place to start. So we can introduce the speakers, we can introduce the features about their identities, what that we see from the information given in the task, then before each of the texts, and so on. So we present a kind of a summary on both, maybe highlighting the simple similarities between the speakers and the contexts. So here we can also add may present similarities. Once again, the similarities between the speakers and the contexts. In very general terms, please. Don't rush into describing the details. It's very important, by the way. Don't be descriptive. Here you can be a little bit descriptive, but overall you need to sustain a tone of evaluation, and evaluation is a product mainly of that point quote comment that we would like to introduce. And this is exactly something for the body, I think. So in the body, it's, by the way, necessary to consider these bullet points. So in the introduction, we have at least partially considered this and a little bit of this partially. So we still have the language and use. So in the body, let's say we would like to introduce as many language frameworks and examples to evaluate. So it means that here is the place to go into that point quote comment shenanigans by giving as many examples as possible, but please, it's also about selectivity. Okay, selectivity. Selectivity means that you understand that if you see only one example to your point, it's not really strong, and you understand that if you see only one point to graphology, maybe it is not worth it to give 10 or 15 sentences to it, but briefly mention it. So introduce as many language frameworks and examples to evaluate, which also means that we point quote comments to sustain the evaluation comparison. And here is a catch in here, that you can focus evaluation. You can focus on the evaluation, or you can focus on the comparison. Actually, one wants to sustain the balance between your evaluation and comparison, which means that you want to give examples from both text A and also text B. Okay, which means that it's a good idea to introduce points that that help you to make a comparison, just like we did with that example of using lexical repetitions. So you see the similarity in both texts, and you're thinking about the way to introduce it and then make an effective comparison. So this is at least partially to cover language frameworks and levels. Then, speaking of the conclusion, I believe it's a good idea not to forget to compare and evaluate the pictures the speakers want to build around themselves. So it's just one take on it. You can write down a paragraph on speakers' identities, plus you want to summarize the general context once again. So summarize the contexts in general. What is the difference between the summary of the context in general compared to the introduction? I think that it should simply sound like a final comparative point, which means that you are highlighting the main information about the context and about the language in use. Maybe you see that some features stand out more than others and you want to highlight them once again and introduce the evaluation in short, or highlight that it is very important. And not to forget, I believe it's a very good idea to highlight who the speakers are and what picture they want to present about themselves in a form of a concluding paragraph, which is only a part of it. I believe this is more or less it. At least it seems to be pretty good to start with, so I hope it helps you at least a tiny bit, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.